Jumbo. Ah! Hey! God damn it! Money. Go. Go. Ah, dekat. Dekat ni sama. Dekat. Kami. Whoa. Back. Whoa. Not yet. Stay. Ah!
In 2023, a British biologist visiting a remote Amazon market saw something that shouldn't exist. It wasn't a new species. It wasn't a mutant. It was something far more terrifying. A creature from another world, a venomous predator that had no business being 2,300 miles from the ocean. This is the story of a discovery that rewrote the rules of nature and the race to stop an apocalypse in the heart of the Amazon. The air in the Belen market is thick, a soupy mix of charcoal smoke, rotting fruit, and the metallic tang of blood. It's a chaotic symphony of sound and smell, 1,000 voices haggling in Spanish and Quechua, the buzz of flies, the thud of cleavers on wooden blocks. Dr. Evan Hayes pushes through the crowd. He's 45, but his face is etched with the lines of a man who has spent too much time in the sun. He's an ichthyologist, a fish scientist, but today he's just a tourist, a man trying to soak in the sights and sounds of Iquitos, Peru, the largest city in the world that cannot be reached by road. He passes stalls piled high with iridescent peacock base, gilded catfish the size of a man's leg, skewers of writhing grubs. This is the raw, unfiltered heart of the Amazon, a biodiversity hotspot, a place where the line between life and death is as thin as a fishing net. And then he sees it, lying on a dirty wooden table between a pile of piranhas and a gutted caiman. A flash of red and white stripes, a crown of venomous spines, a creature that belongs in a coral reef. Not here. It's a lionfish. Hayes stops. He stares. It can't be. It's a joke, a prank. Someone must have brought it from the coast. A frozen specimen, a curiosity. He steps closer. The fish is fresh. Its eyes are clear. Its gills are still red. It was caught here. In the Amazon, in fresh water. Impossible. Lionfish are a marine species. They live in the salt water of the Indo-Pacific. They are a devastating invasive species in the Caribbean. But the Amazon? The largest freshwater river system in the world? It's like finding a polar bear in the Sahara. He feels a cold knot of dread in his stomach. This is wrong. Terribly wrong. This is a violation of the natural order, a biological crime. He has to know. He has to understand. He turns to the fisherman behind the stall, an old man with a face like a dried-up riverbed. He points to the lionfish. "Where did you get this?" Hayes asks, his voice barely a whisper. The old man shrugs. "The river," he says, his voice raspy. "A new fish. The river gives us many strange things these days." "What part of the river?" Hayes presses. "Where exactly did you catch it?" The old man hesitates. He looks around nervously. He lowers his voice. "The Devil's Garden," he says. "A cursed place. A place where the water is sick. Where the fish are. Wrong. Hayes has heard of the Devil's Garden, an area of the river a few hours downstream from Iquitos, a place that other fishermen avoid. They say it is haunted, that the fish there are deformed, that the water itself is poisonous. But Hayes is a scientist. He doesn't believe in curses. He believes in data, in evidence, in the scientific method, and he knows that he has to go to the Devil's Garden. He has to see it for himself. He has to understand what is happening in the heart of the Amazon. He buys the lionfish. He takes it back to his small, makeshift lab in his hotel room. He dissects it. He analyzes its stomach contents. He takes tissue samples. He is looking for answers, for clues, for anything that can explain the impossible. And what he finds is even more terrifying than he could have imagined. The fish is not just surviving in fresh water, it is thriving, it is healthy, it is well fed, and it is a female filled with eggs, tens of thousands of them, a biological time bomb. But that's not the worst part. The stomach contents are a horror show, a graveyard of native Amazonian species, tiny catfish, juvenile tetras, the next generation of the river's delicate ecosystem, all consumed by this one single predator. Hayes realizes that this is not just an isolated incident, this is an invasion that could destroy the Amazon, an invasion that could cause an ecological collapse on a scale that the world has never seen. He has to stop it. He has to sound the alarm. He has to convince the world that the impossible has happened, that a monster is loose in the Amazon, a monster that science said could not exist. He calls his colleagues, his funders, the government. They don't believe him. They think he is crazy, mistaken, exaggerating. A lionfish in the Amazon? It's a good story, they say, but it's not science. You need proof, they tell him. You need more than one fish. You need a live specimen. You need to go to the Devil's Garden. Hayes knows they are right. He needs proof. He needs to go to the source. He needs to face the monster in its lair. He hires a boat, a guide, a man named Matteo, a man who is not afraid of curses, a man who is willing to go to the Devil's Garden for a price. They travel for hours, down the river, deeper and deeper into the jungle. The world becomes a blur of green and brown. The air grows heavy. The silence is broken only by the drone of the engine and the cry of a distant bird. They reach the Devil's Garden. The water is a strange color, a murky, stagnant brown. The trees are twisted, deformed, their roots like skeletal fingers clutching at the riverbank. The air smells of decay, of death. The place feels wrong, unnatural, evil. Matteo makes the sign of the cross. "This is a bad place, Signor," he says, his voice tight with fear, "a place where God does not look." Hayes ignores him. He is a scientist, and this is his laboratory. He drops a net into the water, a small, fine-meshed net designed to catch juvenile fish. He wants to see what is living in this water, what is surviving. He pulls the net up. It is full, not of native fish, but of them, lionfish, dozens of them, all small, all juveniles, all born here, in the Amazon, in fresh water. It's a nursery, a breeding ground, a beachhead for an invasion. Hayes is horrified, but he is also vindicated. He has his proof. The world will have to believe him now. But as he looks at the writhing mass of venomous spines in his net, he realizes that this is no longer a scientific problem. This is a war for the Amazon, a war for the planet. And he is on the front lines. He has to do more than just sound the alarm. He has to fight. He has to find a way to stop them, to eradicate them, before it's too late. But how do you fight a monster that shouldn't exist? A monster that is rewriting the rules of nature? A monster that is thriving in a world where it has no enemies? A monster that is breeding faster than you can kill it? Hayes doesn't have the answers, but he knows he has to find them. He is the only one who can. He is the only one who knows the truth, the terrible, impossible truth. The Amazon is under attack, and the fate of the world hangs in the balance. He is no longer a tourist. He is a soldier, a warrior, a man on a mission to save the Amazon, or die trying. The Devil's Garden has a new ghost, and it is him. The discovery of the lionfish nursery was a turning point. It was the proof that Hayes needed, the smoking gun. He sent the samples, the photos, the data. The world could no longer ignore him. The scientific community was in an uproar. The media was in a frenzy. The impossible had happened, and the world was finally paying attention. But attention was not enough. Hayes needed action. He needed a plan. He needed to find the source of the invasion, the patient zero, the place where the lionfish had first entered the Amazon. He knew it couldn't be a natural migration. The Amazon Orinoco plume, a massive outflow of fresh water into the Atlantic, was a natural barrier, a wall that had kept the marine life of the Caribbean out of the Amazon for millions of years. No, this was not a natural event. This was an act of man, an act of either incredible stupidity or incredible malice. He started his investigation in Iquitos. The city was a hub for the ornamental fish trade, a multi-million-dollar industry that shipped exotic Amazonian species to aquariums around the world. It was a shadowy world, a world of smugglers, of corruption, of a blatant disregard for the law. Hayes suspected that the lionfish had been brought to Iquitos as part of this trade, that they had either escaped or been intentionally released. He started visiting the exporters, the breeders, the collectors. He asked questions. He showed them photos of the lionfish. He was met with a wall of silence, of denial, of thinly veiled threats. "We don't deal in that kind of fish," they told him. "It's a saltwater fish. It's worthless here. You're wasting your time." But Hayes was persistent. He knew they were lying. He could see it in their eyes, the fear, the guilt. He was getting close, too close. One night, his hotel room was ransacked. His notes were stolen. His samples were destroyed. He was given a warning, a clear message: stop digging, or else. But Hayes was not a man who was easily intimidated. The attack only strengthened his resolve. He knew he was on the right track. He had to be. He decided to change his tactics. He would go undercover. He would pose as a collector, a wealthy foreigner looking for rare and exotic species. He would enter the shadowy world of the ornamental fish trade. And he would find the man who was responsible for unleashing the lionfish on the Amazon. He created a new identity, a new backstory, a new email address. He started making inquiries. He let it be known that he was looking for something special, something unique, something that no one else had. He was looking for a fish that could live in both fresh water and salt water, a fish that was beautiful but deadly, a fish that was impossible. He was looking for a lionfish. It didn't take long. The whispers started, the rumors, of a man who could get you anything you wanted, for a price, a man who operated outside the law, a man who was known only as El Escorpión, the Scorpion. Hayes knew that this was his man. This was the source, the patient zero. He arranged a meeting, a clandestine rendezvous in a seedy bar on the outskirts of Iquitos. El Escorpión was not what he expected. He was not a hardened criminal, a ruthless gangster. He was a small, unassuming man in his late 50s. He wore glasses. He had a kind smile. He looked like a high school science teacher. But his eyes were cold, hard, the eyes of a man who had seen too much, a man who had no conscience, no soul. They talked for hours. Hayes played his part, the eager collector, the wealthy amateur. El Escorpión played his, the cautious dealer, the master of his trade. They danced a delicate dance of lies and half-truths, a verbal chess match where a single mistake could mean death. Hayes finally made his move. "I want a lionfish," he said, his voice steady. "A live one, a breeding pair. I'm told you're the man who can get them for me." El Escorpión smiled, a slow, cold smile. "That is a very unusual request," he said. "A very dangerous request. Lionfish are a marine species. They cannot survive in the Amazon." "I've heard otherwise," Hayes said, looking him straight in the eye. "I've heard that someone has found a way to breed them in fresh water, a way to create a new, impossible species." El Escorpión's smile faded. His eyes narrowed. "Who told you this?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "A little bird," Hayes said. "A little bird that sings a very interesting song. A song about a man who is playing God with the Amazon. A man who is about to become very, very rich. Or very, very dead." There was a long silence. The air was thick with tension. The only sound was the buzz of a single fly. El Escorpion stared at Hayes. He was trying to read him, to see if he was a threat, a cop, a rival. Finally he spoke. "You are either a very brave man," he said, "or a very foolish one. I have not yet decided which." "I'm just a man who wants what he wants," Hayes said, "and I'm willing to pay for it, handsomely." El Escorpion considered this. He was a businessman after all, and business was business. "It will be expensive," he said, "very expensive." "I can afford it," Hayes said. "And it will be dangerous," El Escorpion added. "There are people who do not want this project to become public knowledge." "I understand the risks," Hayes said. El Escorpion nodded. He seemed to have made a decision. "Very well," he said. "I will see what I can do, but I make no promises. And if you are not who you say you are, if you are a policeman, a journalist, a scientist, then you will regret this day for the rest of your very short life." He stood up. The meeting was over. "I will contact you," he said, and then he was gone, disappeared into the night, leaving Hayes alone with his thoughts and his fear. He had done it. He had made contact. He had found the source. But he had also walked into the lion's den. He was playing a very dangerous game, a game with no rules, a game where the prize was the future of the Amazon, and the price of failure was his own life. He knew he could not do this alone. He needed help. He needed backup. He needed to trust someone. But who? The police were corrupt. The government was incompetent. The scientific community was a world away. He thought of Mateo, the boat guide, the man who had taken him to the Devil's Garden, a man who knew the river, a man who was not afraid of curses, or of men like El Escorpion. He found Mateo at the docks. He told him everything: the lionfish, the nursery, the smugglers, El Escorpion, the plan. Mateo listened patiently. He did not seem surprised or shocked. He had seen the darkness in the heart of the Amazon before. He had seen what men were capable of, for money, for power. "This is a bad business, senor," he said when Hayes was finished. "A very bad business. El Escorpion is a dangerous man. He has killed before. He will kill again." "I know," Hayes said, "but I have to stop him. We have to stop him." "We?" Mateo asked, raising an eyebrow. "I can't do this alone," Hayes said. "I need your help, Mateo. I need your knowledge of the river, your courage, your loyalty." Mateo was silent for a long time. He looked out at the river. His river, the river that had given him life, the river that was now being threatened by a monster from another world. "What do you need me to do?" he asked finally. Hayes smiled. He had found his ally, his partner, his friend. He was no longer alone. He had a chance, a fighting chance. "I need you to be my eyes and ears on the river," he said. "I need you to find out where El Escorpion is keeping the lionfish, where his secret laboratory is, where he is breeding his monsters." "And what will you do, senor?" Mateo asked. "I will do what I do best," Hayes said. "I will gather the evidence. I will build the case. And then I will expose him to the world. I will be the scientist. You will be the warrior. Together, we will save the Amazon." Mateo nodded, a slow, solemn nod. "For the river," he said. "For the river," Hayes echoed. They shook hands. A pact was made, An alliance was forged, a scientist and a fisherman, two men from different worlds, united by a common cause, a common enemy, a common love for the river that was their home. The war for the Amazon had begun, and the fate of the world rested on their shoulders, the ghost and the warrior, the scientist and the fisherman, the hunter and the hunted. The game was afoot, and the stakes had never been higher. The world held its breath. The river waited, and the lionfish, in their dark, secret nursery, continued to breed. A silent, deadly army, waiting for their moment, their time, their chance to conquer a new world, a world that was not prepared for them, a world that was about to be turned upside down by a fish that shouldn't exist in a place where it shouldn't be. The nightmare was real, and it was just beginning. Mateo was a man of his word. He disappeared into the labyrinthine world of the Iquitos waterfront, a world of whispers and rumors, a world where secrets were a currency more valuable than gold. He listened, he watched, he asked questions. He used his network of fishermen, of cousins, of friends of friends. He was a ghost, a shadow. And slowly, piece by piece, he began to assemble the puzzle. He learned that El Escorpión had a hidden facility, a floating laboratory, a place that was not on any map, a place that was protected by armed guards, a place that was said to be a fortress, impenetrable. But Mateo was a fisherman. He knew the river, he knew its secrets, he knew that every fortress has a weakness, every wall has a crack, and he was determined to find it. He found it in the form of a disgruntled employee, a young man who had been cheated by El Escorpión, a man who was looking for revenge and for a way out. Mateo met with him in secret. He offered him a deal, information for a new life, a way to escape the clutches of El Escorpión. The young man agreed. He was terrified, but he was also desperate. He told Mateo everything: the location of the floating lab, the security protocols, the number of guards, the schedule of deliveries. He drew a map, a detailed blueprint of the fortress. He was the key, the crack in the wall. Mateo brought the information to Hayes. The scientist was overjoyed. This was the break they had been waiting for, the chance to get inside, to get the evidence they needed to bring El Escorpión down. But it was also a trap, a suicide mission. The lab was a fortress. The guards were armed and dangerous. A direct assault was out of the question. They needed a plan, a clever plan, a crazy plan, and Hayes had one. He would use El Escorpión's own greed against him. He would set a trap baited with the one thing that El Escorpión could not resist: money. He contacted El Escorpión. He told him that he was ready to make the purchase, the breeding pair of lionfish. He had the money, $500,000 in cash. He wanted to see the fish, to inspect them, to make sure they were the real deal. Before he handed over the money, El Escorpión was suspicious, but the lure of $500,000 was too strong. He agreed, but on his terms. The meeting would take place at the floating lab, at night. Hayes would come alone, unarmed, any sign of a trick, of a trap, and he would be killed. Instantly. Hayes agreed. He knew it was a risk, a huge risk, but it was the only way to get inside, the only way to get the evidence. He had a plan that involved Mateo, the river, and a little bit of chaos. The night of the meeting was dark, stormy. The river was a churning mass of black water, the perfect cover. Hayes arrived at the designated spot, a deserted stretch of riverbank. He was alone, unarmed. He waited. A boat appeared out of the darkness, a sleek black speedboat, manned by two of El Escorpión's guards. They frisked him. They blindfolded him. They pushed him into the boat. and they sped off into the night. They traveled for what felt like hours, twisting and turning through a maze of narrow channels. Hayes was completely disoriented. He had no idea where he was. He was at their mercy. Finally, the boat slowed. The blindfold was removed. He saw it. The floating lab. A massive, rusting hulk of a barge. It was anchored in the middle of a remote lagoon, surrounded by dense jungle. It was a fortress, just as the informant had described. He was taken aboard. The deck was crawling with armed guards. They were tense, jumpy. They watched his every move. He was a lamb in a den of wolves. He was taken to El Escorpion's office, a lavishly decorated room in the heart of the barge, a stark contrast to the rusting decay of the exterior. El Escorpion was sitting behind a large, ornate desk. He was smiling, the smile of a predator who has its prey exactly where it wants it. "Welcome to my humble abode, Mr. Hayes," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Or should I say, Dr. Hayes?" Hayes froze. His blood ran cold. El Escorpion knew. He had known all along. It was a trap, and he had walked right into it. "I must admit you had me fooled for a while," El Escorpion continued, his smile widening. "The eager collector, the wealthy amateur. It was a good performance, a very good performance, but not good enough." He stood up. He walked around the desk. He stood in front of Hayes. He was holding a gun, a small silver pistol. He pointed it at Hayes's chest. "You see, Dr. Hayes," he said, his voice a low, menacing whisper, "I am not just a businessman. I am a scientist who is not bound by the petty rules of ethics and morality, a scientist who is willing to do what it takes to push the boundaries of nature, to create new life, to become a god." He gestured to a large aquarium behind his desk. It was filled with them, lionfish, dozens of them. But they were different, bigger, more colorful, more aggressive. They were his creations, his monsters. "These are not your ordinary lionfish, Dr. Hayes," he said, his eyes gleaming with a mad light. "These are a new breed, a hybrid, a species that I have created, a species that can thrive in both freshwater and saltwater, a species that is more venomous, more aggressive, more adaptable than any fish on the planet. They are the perfect predator, the perfect invasive species, and they are my masterpiece." He laughed, a cold, chilling laugh. "And you, Dr. Hayes," he said, "you are about to become their first human victim, a fitting end for a man who tried to play God with my creations." He cocked the gun. The sound was deafening in the small room. This was it, the end. Hayes closed his eyes. He thought of the river, of the Amazon, of the world he had tried to save. He had failed. The monster had won. And then he heard it, a sound, a distant explosion. The barge shook. The lights flickered. The guards shouted in alarm. El Escorpion was startled. He looked towards the door. "What was that?" he yelled. It was the signal. Mateo. He had done it. He had created the diversion, the chaos, the opportunity. Hayes acted. He lunged at El Escorpion. He grabbed the gun. They struggled. The gun went off. The bullet shattered the aquarium. Water and glass and venomous lionfish exploded into the room. El Escorpion screamed. A lionfish had landed on his chest. Its spines had pierced his skin. The venom was already coursing through his veins. He was in agony. He was dying. Hayes didn't wait. He ran. He ran out of the office, onto the deck. The barge was in chaos. The guards were firing wildly into the darkness. They didn't know what was happening. They were panicked, confused. Hayes saw his chance. He jumped. He jumped into the black water of the Amazon. He swam. He swam for his life. He didn't look back. He didn't want to see the fire, the explosions, the destruction of the floating lab, the death of the monster and his creations. He swam until he reached the shore. He collapsed on the riverbank, exhausted but alive. He had done it. He had survived. He had won. Matteo was there. He pulled him from the water. He wrapped him in a blanket. "I knew you could do it, Signor," he said, his voice filled with pride. "I knew you were a warrior." Hayes smiled, a weak, tired smile. "We did it, Matteo," he said. "We did it together." They had done it. They had saved the Amazon. They had stopped the invasion. They had defeated the monster. But they both knew that the war was not over. The Devil's Garden was still out there. The nursery was still breeding. The lionfish were still a threat that they would have to continue to fight for the rest of their lives. But for now, they had won a battle, a major battle, and they had sent a message to the world. A message that the Amazon was not for sale, that it was not a laboratory for mad scientists, that it was a sacred place, a place worth fighting for, a place worth dying for. And as they looked out at the river, at the first light of dawn breaking over the jungle, they knew that they would not be fighting alone. The world was finally awake. The world was finally ready to join the fight for the Amazon, the fight for the planet, the fight for the future, the fight that had been started by a single fish, a fish that shouldn't exist, in a place where it shouldn't be, the fish that had changed everything, forever.